He's gorgeous.
Welcome to the latest version of the Vidyuu Essentials Bundle, where we're introducing bees and flowers and a beehive. And these bees are pretty cool, you know? They fly around, they get their honey, and they even protect their beehives. So watch out, they will come after you. And once you get far enough away, they do end up returning to the flower patch or whatever they were doing beforehand and continue on their journey. So awesome new asset. Join us today as we learn how to build this asset. And if you'd like a copy of these awesome bees and the script, you can get that now at the Vidyuu Essentials Bundle. If you've already been added, you just got an update. Otherwise, you can leave your Oculus username in the comments and we'll add you very soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We look forward to seeing you in Horizon. You'll see that we started by building these amazing flower patch. We kept it relatively square. Then we built this awesome new tree, as well as this really cool beehive. We did make sure to make the tree collidable, so that way the bees can avoid it because they're using raycast to avoid that. And now let's start scripting. Be smiling today as we start our bee-rific.
I was beginning to like them. All right.
Ah! Okay, now we'll knock it off. Okay, so first thing you need to note is the goal today is to get this bee to fly around the flower patch randomly, to have some additional flying abilities where it just kind of wanders around and then it eventually comes back to the flower patch. After the flowers, it comes up to the beehive, stays there for a minute, and then it comes back out, flies around. If a player gets too close to the beehive, it'll chase the player for a little bit before returning. And that's more or less the plan. So let's go ahead and start by figuring out something. Let's start with a really basic script with our bee, and we're just going to get it to fly back and forth between the two positions, and then we'll make it more complex. So starting here, we're going to build the BAI. We're going to create some variables. So the first variable we want to create is going to be the beehive variable, the flower patch object variable. We know the destinations we're going to be heading to. And then what we need to know is kind of a speed. How fast does the bee travel? So we're going to create a new number variable, which is going to be called speed in meters per second. We got our speed, and we're going to have the bee travel at 0.5 meters per second. And I'll show you how we're going to calculate that in just a minute. So when world is started, we need to create a loop, and we're going to say when event loop is received. Now I've got loop in my dropdown, but you can create it by using new event, and then we'll type in LOOP. Perfect. And then to send that event, we'll go here to send event to object. There we go. And the event we're sending is the loop event. Perfect. Now the next thing we need to do is send loop to self with a delay for when it gets to its destination. So we do need to calculate how long is it going to take. We can find loop is now in our dropdown now that we've created it. There we go. So for now, we're going to go ahead and delete the 1 second, and I'm going to create a new variable, and I'm going to use an underscore for this number variable because this is going to be called loop speed, which is going to represent how long until the next loop speed. So we'll go ahead and put that here as our delay. And what we need to know is a kind of a holding time. So let's create a new number variable called hold time. So this is how long the bee will hold in a specific spot. So we'll go ahead and call this 2 seconds for now. And then we need to set our loop speed. And so we'll grab loop speed, put it in here, and then we're going to grab a plus symbol here. And we're going to add to loop speed with that hold time. There we go. And now the next part of this loop speed we need to calculate is the time it takes to get from position 1 to position 2. Now this is actually relatively simple. So we need to find the current position of the bee. And so we're going to go and grab, but we have to think of the last step first. So what we're going to do is take the current position of the bee, find the distance from it to its destination, take that distance and multiply it by the travel speed in meters per second. So since we're doing it half a meter per second, it's going to multiply and become half, which is actually too fast. So we kind of need to do the opposite of multiply, which is divide. So the last thing we're doing is dividing. So we'll drop that in here. And then what are we dividing by? Well, we're dividing by 0.5. So that's our speed. There we go. And then our next thought is the distance to, which is under operators, under vector, we have distance to. And now we need to plug in the distance. So our current position and then our destination position. And so our current position, since this is running on the bee, we go to object. And we can grab position of object, put that into our A slot, and this is the position of self. You can find self from up here, but you can also find it on your values tab right there. Okay, so we've got the position of self, and our destination is either going to be the flower patch or the beehive. So I'm thinking kind of long term. So if you knew that you just wanted the bee to fly back and forth, you could use a Boolean and just toggle it back and forth. But because we're going to do more than just the flower patch and the beehive, I'm actually going to create a new variable, which is going to be kind of a state variable. So it'll be in the number variable. And we're going to call this current state. And so current state is going to start at 0, which means it's just started. The world has just started. And then we'll do position 1 will be the flower patch, and position 2 will be the beehive. So with that in mind, we can use this current state with an if. So we grab an if control from our events tab, put that up here. Then we're going to need an else if and an else. So there's 3 different categories, right? So it's if equals 0, if equals 1, and if equals 2. So what we want to do is set our current state to be +1 after we've done this update. So after we've done this check, we're going to change our current state. So let's go ahead and add a plus symbol here. Although we want to use a modulus first. So modulus is really cool. If you have never used it before, I'll quickly explain it. So put your plus symbol in the left side. So this is the value that we're going to be modifying with the modulus. And so we take current state +1. So under value input, we'll grab number input 1. And so what modulus allows us to do is divide by and get the remainder. So if we divide this by 3, when the current state gets to 3, it's actually going to return a 0, which means we're going to constantly cycle between 0, 1, and 2. So 0 being maybe a state where it's just kind of floating around somewhere random, 1 being it's at the flower patch, and 2 being it's at the beehive. So let's go add our equals symbol. So under operators, we have equals equals, which means equal to. And then we'll grab our next equals, that'll go under else if, and then back under our values tab, we can grab some more number inputs, and we're going to check against 0 and 1, and we'll know that our else is a 2. We can then drag current state here and there. So current state 0, we know that the world has just started, and we want to move the bee to the flower patch. So what we're going to do is on our variables tab, create a new variable, and this is going to be a vector called destination. So I use underscore to note that we're not changing it on our bee itself. So this is called destination position. It's a vector, and we want to set it. So we'll grab set to from the values tab, put that under the if, and then go back over here, grab our destination position. And in this current state equals 0, our destination position is the flower patch. And it's not just the flower patch, but it's the topmost of the flower patch. And so to calculate the destination position of the flower patch, we're going to take the position of the flower patch plus an up on the y of the width or the height of the flowers. And so we can see that's along the z-axis, that's the blue axes. So let's go to our value. We're going to need to add 2 values together. So we'll grab our plus symbol here. And then the second value, our b value, is a new vector from x, y, z. So we'll go ahead and plug that into the b slot. Our a value is the position of the flower patch. So now we'll go put position of there, back on our variables tab, grab the flower patch. Now you're going to note this gives us the center point of the flower patch. And so for our new vector, we want to move up on the y. So we're going to grab the scale and divide it by 2. So we'll go back on our operators tab. We'll go grab the divide symbol, drop that into the y slot. On our values tab, we can grab the number input 0 for z, 0 for x, and we're going to put a 2 into the division slot of our y value. And then a is going to be back on our operators tab. We can get the, so you'll remember we're looking for the z of the scale of the flower patch. So we're going to go grab z of vector, so we can get the z of that scale vector, and then we can get a scale of an object flower patch. So I think it's a good point here to take a moment to discuss what do you get when you're looking at vectors. And so vectors aren't that scary. They're really just 3 numbers. It's an x, it's a y, and it's a z. And so if we're looking at a position, x, y, z position, we're all familiar with. Scale is x scale, the y scale, and the z scale. And so we're taking those values, and our flower patch happens to be oriented not with the world. So you can see that our z is here, this is our x, and it's also red, green, blue. So you'll note x is red, y is green, and blue is our z. And so we know that we need the z of our scale, which is how we get that. And now that we've divided by 2, we can make sure our bee is going up high enough. But this doesn't actually take into account the height of the bee. And so I'd almost argue that we should actually try and calculate the height of the bee, but rather than doing it by like actually calculating it, let's actually just modify this number. So rather than dividing it by 2, let's divide it by 1.5, which will leave a little bit of a gap as the bee hovers above the flowers. So we're going to go 1.5, and we can just slightly adjust that later to kind of finesse it and get our number exactly right. Okay, so we've determined a position, which is currently the center of the flower patch. We'll mess with that in a little bit. And then the next position is going to be the position of our beehive. So we'll go do the same thing, set destination position to position of not flower patch, but the position of the beehive. And the question we have to ask ourselves here is, do we need to modify it by any value? We do kind of want it to be off to the side, and we really want it to come through that black dot. But I'm actually thinking, why don't we, instead of referencing the beehive itself, we just reference the specific object that we want the bee to fly to. And that should work well for now. At some point, we're going to want to make sure the bee turns invisible and all of that. But let's just start with some basics. And so instead of using all of this modification here, we're just going to go ahead and use position of beehive. And what I usually do when I have all this like plus symbol is I'll duplicate this set. I can then delete this whole plus and drag position of here and then delete the extra one. Okay, wonderful. So now we need to determine, where do we go after we've done these 2 flights? Well, the answer is we should fly off kind of somewhere in between. And so for now, just to kind of get a position that's somewhere off in the ether, we're going to set the destination position to be a lerp. So if you're not familiar with lerp, it's linear interpolation, and it's going to allow us to find a position between 2 positions. And so we'll grab a position of beehive. So we're going to go from the beehive to the position of the flower patch, and we're going to hover somewhere about halfway through. And so that's what our alpha is. And we put the number input here, and we'll go ahead and 0.6 or 0.4 maybe. So it's not exactly perfectly in the center, but it's just kind of flying along. It pauses for a second, then it's going to continue its flight to the flower patch. So that should be pretty cool. And last here, we just need to insert that destination position. So remember before we were calculating loop speed, and so loop speed required distance from the position of self to the destination position, which we've now determined via our if and else and else. And so with that, we've got our speed at which the bee is going to fly. And now we can move the bee to that destination position. So on our motion tab, we're going to grab the move to, and we'll go ahead and put that right here before we add the hold time to it, because we want the bee to move there. Although I grabbed the wrong move to, so we'll delete this one. Back here on the motion, there's instant motion, and I meant to grab from here motion over time. So grab move to over time, place that in between these 2, and then that position we're going to is the destination position. The motion is happening to self. The speed is our loop speed, and like that, we should actually be good to go. So let's go try attaching this to our bee. So down here on our bee, we're going to hit the drop down. Hi, Oculus.
Did I miss the lerp explanation?
Yeah, I think you missed the lerp explanation.
Dang it, next time.
So we've attached the bee and it's kind of floating off. So we're going to stop the world so it doesn't do that until we're ready, because we need to reference all of our positions. So let's go and open up the beehive here. And then in our beehive, we can zoom in by hitting this button here. And the object we really want to reference is this black object here. So we'll bring that out. And then using this reference pill, we can drag that down here to beehive. And one thing to note is when you reference an object, it automatically becomes animated, but we don't need to animate this, so we'll turn it off, and that will save us some animation capacity. We can close out of this, and then we can zoom out by either hitting this button, or I like to double click on my index trigger to quickly zoom out. And then we want to go to our flower patch down here, and we're going to do the exact same thing we did with that black part of the beehive, reference it there in the empty pill, and then we're going to change it back to none. And like that, our bee should work. I'm a little nervous. I always am. So we'll go ahead and hit play. So far, so good. Bee's moving into position. It's a little high, so we might want to adjust that. It's now flying up to the beehive. Go bee. And it's got a very uniform speed. It's now landed in the beehive. It's going to fly to roughly 40% back. And this is a pretty basic animation, right? Like it's just very simple. We haven't even added rotation. It's not even pointing in the right direction, but we are on the right track. So I think we should go and adjust the height back to where we had it before, where it was divided by 2 rather than 1.5. And yeah, let's give that a go. So we're going to stop the world now. So down here where we were dividing by 1.5, we're going to change that back to divide by 2. And that should get our B a little bit lower. And now let's go ahead and hit play and see where it goes to. So there it goes. It's now flying much more over. Could actually be quite a bit lower than that even. So let's maybe take that value down by a little bit more. So again, we're coming back here and we're going to divide it by 3 this time and just see where that puts it at. Okay, here comes our B. Nice. That is much better. So it doesn't look like the bee's flying through, it's just kind of hovering. So nailed it with the bee. Now let's get the rotation right. So we want the bee to face in the direction it's going. And so similar to how we were able to calculate the loop speed, we can use the position of self and the destination position to form a rotation. So we want to face towards the destination position. And so to do that, we're going to go to our motion tab and grab rotate to over time. We'll go ahead and place this at the bottom right before the loop event. Now we kind of want this bee to rotate before it arrives. So assuming it's going to take more than 1 second, let's leave it at 1 second. That seems fine. Now rotating self is accurate. This position is wrong. So we're going to delete this rotation input by pulling down on our right thumbstick. And the input here is going to be from our operators tab. We're going down to vector math where you'll see look at. Now look at, you need to provide it a forward direction. And so this is kind of important. And I'm actually going to stop our bee who's still flying around in a very awkward pose. And we need to kind of look at our bee for a second and see which direction is our bee facing. Its Y, which is technically up, is facing this way. So we are a little bit off on its rotation, but we can fix that pretty easily after this. So what I'd like to do before we use our look at is actually put a plus symbol in here. And so if we go grab, say, this plus symbol, we can delete these values out of it now. And then back here, we'll grab look at. And then at the very end, we're going to go to our values tab and grab a rotation input. And this will allow us to modify the rotation. Now, please note that in rotations, the plus symbol does not follow the cumulative property. It's kind of actually very different. It's Rotarians, and I'm not going to explain it all today, but what you do need to know is that this position, having the look towards on the left and this additional rotation on the right, is important because this rotation affects it when the world has started its origin rotation. Now, the next thing we need to note is it's going to need some amount of rotation, but we will get to that. First, let's try to get some amount of facing in the right direction. And so the forward direction is calculated by taking this position and the destination position and subtracting them. And so we'll go to the top of our operators tab and we'll grab the minus symbol. We'll then go grab our position of self in the A slot, our destination position in the B slot, and our up is going to be 0, 1, 0. And so this value isn't exactly important to fully understand right now, but what you can understand is that 0, 1, 0 means the Y value is pointing upwards. And so we know that we want the bee to kind of always face with its head pointing towards the sun, or the back of its head pointing towards the sun. And so when we get this set up correctly, this will enable that. So if you did -1 here, it would actually face in the opposite direction, which is quite handy to know. And then 1 on this side would face towards the left and then to the right or forward and back. So yes, lots of fun with rotations. They're really quite complicated. I've barely started to scratch the surface. So with that, I believe we do have our rotation set up correctly. And now let's go and see what happens. So we should expect to see the bee is off by an amount. And it looks like it's off by 90-90. So it is off by a little bit. Let's see if we can adjust that. We're just going to throw in a 90 here and see what happens. Okay, so we've got it corrected there. And now we need to flatten it out. And I'm just guessing and checking and seeing how close can I get. And so, well, that wasn't right. So we'll go maybe try it over here and see if we get a little bit closer. No, that's almost exactly the opposite, which is actually a good thing. I mean, it means we are close. So let's try a negative 90 and see if that gives us what we're looking for. So now it's going to, oh, there it is. The bee knows how to fly in a straight line. That is what we call a bee line. Wonderful. And so we should see the bee turn around and head right back. Very nice. Great job, bee. Now, with our bee making the rounds, it's about time that we start giving it some random destination, right? So rather than landing in the center of the flower patch, why don't we choose a random position along the top of the flower patch? This is actually quite easy to set up. Let's start by stopping our world here. And then you'll remember in our first if, when it was equal to 0, we set the destination position to be the flower patch plus a new vector, and we were using the scale to adjust where it would end up. Now, we could use a similar method to calculate the random position with like a negative scale and a positive scale for both the x and the z, but I think it would be best if we just kind of guesstimate here and create a new variable for this. And this variable is going to be called random offset, which we're going to set to be 1 meter. And this is going to allow the bee to show up like 1 meter to the left, 1 meter to the right. And so what we're going to do is come down here where we have 0, delete 0, and then go to our operators tab, scroll down to random number with decimals, place that into our X slot, and the maximum value is this number. But let's actually type in a negative number here. This will just make it a little bit easier. So if we do -1, we can then go to our operators tab, and for our positive value, use the absolute value. That's that ABS here. An absolute value makes a negative a positive, so we can then just thumbstick this in here and there, and now it'll choose a random number with decimals between -1 and +1. We can then duplicate this into our Z slot, and when the bee goes to that position, it will actually be a random position over there. So let's see, where's it going? Look at that. Look at that. It found a new spot that it's never been to. That is really cool. Sometimes it'll actually look like it's landing on a flower. I think most often that won't be the case. But what we should set up now is actually a new destination inside of here. So rather than just stopping at one flower, why not have it go to a couple flowers before continuing on? And that's actually relatively easy to set up. So now that you've learned how to do random numbers, let's go and set up a new if statement that changes our current state. So let's go stop the world for a second. Then we're going to come back up to our events, grab an if. We want to do a random number check to see what is the frequency. And so we do like a random number between 0 and 100. And if it's below 60%, it's going to go to another flower. And so what we can do is create a new variable called another flower, which we'll set to go to 75 actually. I just want this to be quite frequent really. And then we go to our operators tab. And what we're checking is to see if our random number between 0 and 100 is less than that new number variable, another flower. And so this allows you to kind of change it. So every bee, some bees might only want to go to one flower, but maybe others go every single time except for like the really, really rare chance. Now let's head back to our operators tab, and where we saw random number with decimals, we have random whole number. That's our random number value here. And we're going to just go ahead and type in 0 and 100. So 0, 1, 0, 0. And now we have set this up. And the last thing to do here is when this happens, we want to set the current state to be current state -1. So I'm just going to duplicate this into the if statement and then delete all of this. Go back up to our operators tab, grab the minus symbol, place that in here. Duplicate that into the A slot and -1 into the B slot. And now it sets current state to be -1, which means it's going to repeat the action of going to a flower when the random number is less than that value of 75. Absolutely wonderful. Let's go ahead and try it out. So we're going to go hit play on our world, and we're going to see this bee is going to travel all over the place. Let's see. Oh, there it goes again to another flower. Not so far. Oh, and that was it. Just 2 flowers this time. I'm thinking we should actually increase this number to 80 or 90. Even there it was like 1 flower. So yeah, let's go increase this percentage actually to 90%. So it's just constantly going to flowers. So we'll go to the variables tab and change the default from 75 to 90. And now we should get a lot more repeats. So I'm going to stop, reset, and play. Nice 5th stop. It might not ever stop. 90 might have been too high. 6. 9. You know what? 75. We might have just got unlucky with our first couple tests because this is on 10 already. And there is a 50% chance it goes to 18 without stopping. So let's go and drop it down to 85 for another flower. I think at this point, maybe we should make the bee feel a little bit more alive. Right now, it's kind of feeling very animatronic, right? So what if we add some sound, like a bzzz sound? And we can do that by going into our build sounds, and we're just going to go ahead and search for bee. Nope, those are not bees. Maybe there's a humming sound. So this is where we go to my good old friend, the Gizmos tab, where we've got the sound recorder gizmo. And on sound recorder, we're going to go start by setting it on loop. Yep. Play and start will be off. No, it'll be on. And then volume is going to be low. Pitch is going to be a little high. And global's off. Distance is going to be set to like 11, really quite low. And here we go. So I'm going to record this, and then I just got to like kind of nail it. Bzzz. And play. Okay, it's a little annoying. Lower it. And take the pitch down. Sounds more like a plane. If we take that volume down just really just almost all the way down. It's not terrible. There it is. Okay, so we've got our bee sound. I'm actually going to lower the distance at which you can hear it. And you kind of have to be really close to hear the bee. So I think this is great. Let's go ahead and take this sound, and we're going to bring it into our bee grouping. So we're going to open the properties panel of our bee. We're going to move this up. We're going to select the sound, hit the zoom in button, and then we're going to snap this into the center of the tail here, so that way it doesn't mess up the bounding box of our bee. Nice, and I zoomed out. We can close out of that now. And now we've got a buzzing bee. Now I'm thinking these bee wings could be flapping, but we're not going to do that today. You'd have to flap them on the wings themselves and use a reference object like the bee itself to make sure they're constantly rotated correctly. But that might be something worth considering at some point. Oh, hey, Oculus. There it goes. Torpedo. And so, yeah, it just kind of floats around a little bit. And it's quite nice, really quite nice.
So what if you spun the beehive and moved it over so it doesn't look like it's just docking in the side of it?
That is a great idea, Oculus. Let's go ahead and spin the side. And that's going to look a little bit nicer. Can I? Oh, I wanted to land on the bee. Bee! No bee landing.
Nice.
Yep. It's kind of hysterical, but it is working, so that's good. So what I think we should do with the bee next is give it some ability to fly around randomly when it's not doing the flower routine. So rather than stopping in the middle, let's add a random like kind of flight path. We're going to need a new variable, and this is going to be a object, and it is a raycast. We're going to want to make sure that we don't fly into things. So this raycast object will allow us to raycast out of the front of the bee to make sure it doesn't. Oh, Oculus is going for a bee ride. Using this raycast, we're going to be able to make sure the bee isn't running into something. And so what we'll do is go to our else here, which is when we were going to fly it to kind of a random position. Delete this set destination position to lerp. We'll keep everything but the lerp, right? So we'll leave that there. And to determine this destination position and make sure we actually want to go there, we're going to want to use a while loop. And so what we're checking is while. So we're going to create a new Boolean variable, and this will be called iterator. This is a weird iterator. And so this iterator Boolean variable, we're going to use by setting the iterator Boolean to be true. And as long as this is true, we're going to run this while loop. The good thing is we're going to be setting it. Oh, excuse me. So we're going to set the iterator. And while that iterator is true, we're going to run this loop. And we're not setting the iterator to be true in the while loop, but we're actually going to set it to be at the bottom of your operators tab, there's get raycast data. And so we're going to want to drag that here. So we're setting it to did hit. And so if we go back to our variables tab, grab the raycast, as long as the raycast did not hit, the while loop will stop. And there's a pretty good chance it won't hit. Otherwise, it's going to loop through again and choose another random rotation, which we're going to set up in a moment. So we're going to set a destination position to be the current position plus a random value. So if we go to the top, we can grab a plus symbol, and then we're going to set the destination position to be the position of self. So we'll go ahead and grab self, and then we're going to add a new vector from x, y, z. There we go. And the new vector will be random number with decimals, yep, between 0 and 1, or actually between -1 and 1, so that way we get all of those variants. And in fact, I think this is actually a great use for that random offset we were using before, right? So that makes sense. So we'll go up here to our absolute value, drag that into the 1 slot, and then grab our random offset and use that here and there. And now we just duplicate this into the Z and the Y. And now what we need to do is take our raycast and use a raycast with overrides. It's found on your Actions tab. And raycast with overrides allows us to fire a raycast from the origin position of self. So that part is relatively easy. And then the direction is just like we calculated before, the position of self minus this new destination position. So we'll go ahead and grab the minus symbol here, drop in position of self as well as destination position. And then the raycast gizmo is that raycast we had just created. So perfect. Now there is a possibility that by using position of self, we end up hitting the B. So what I think we could do is make the B non-collidable. I'm not sure if that'll work, but let's go ahead and try it out. So we'll go open up the B's property panel. We're going to need to bring out a raycast for the B. So we'll go ahead and grab raycast for the B. And under the B's raycast properties, we only want to raycast about, let's go with 1.5 meters. Okay. And then we're colliding with both players and objects. And now we can take this raycast pill, fill it in here under the empty slot. So now we've got our raycast set up. And then over here on our B, we wanted to make it non-collidable. So unfortunately, no more B writing for you, Oculus. I apologize. We could do some math to kind of solve for this, but I think this will work pretty well. And now back on our BAI, we've got a destination position set. We then raycast to see if there's anything in line with that destination position. And as long as there's nothing in the way of getting to that destination position, the while loop will stop running and we will travel to that new destination position. Now what we want to use is up here, that random number value we used for another flower. We're going to use that exact same line here below the while loop, which is going to allow us to choose to go and kind of just keep fluttering around for a little bit. So let's go and try it out. So I go script and play. No more riding the bee.
Come back.
Bye, bee! And so now that it's done flying to the beehive in 2 seconds, it's going to fly to a random destination. So let's see where it goes. Oh, it's diving down. Okay, nice. Now it's going off over here. Very nice. And it's decided to go up into this tree. It's just kind of fluttering. Not bad, not bad. I feel like the random time might be a little... Oh, and it flew into a tree. Now, it might be because this tree is non-collidable. So what I think I'd like to do is make it when it's fluttering around out there that it doesn't stop. It doesn't hover in place like it was. So to do that, we're going to adjust our script a little bit. Down here at the bottom, when we were determining to add this loop speed, let's only do that if it's going to the hive or if it is going to the flower patch. So we know that happens as long as it's not 2. So as long as it is not equal to 2, we want to do that. So we're going to go grab an if statement here, and then we're going to grab a not symbol from the top of our operators. That's the exclamation point equals. So we're going to say as long as the current state does not equal 2, we want to pause, and that's where we add this hold time to it. And now when it gets to that position out there, it will float around freely. Whoa. Okay, something's wrong.
He's on his way.
Maybe it shouldn't have the ability to fly up once it leaves the beehive. And so under our BAI, we have this not equal to 2, which means it should have been pausing before, which it was, but it didn't when it was going to the beehive because it adds to the current state before then, which means as long as it's not equal to 0 is when we want to do it. So I actually had it a little bit off. There we go. And then up here where we're choosing that random destination, we were using the random offset of 1 for our y. So here's our x, this is our y, and that's our z. So here, instead of using random offset, let's actually just set this to be a value like point, I don't know, 0.2. So it could fly up, but it's very unlikely. 1 and 2. And there it goes with a general trajectory down. Very nice. That looks a little more realistic. It's not pausing anywhere. Oh, it's actually already ready to go flying and collecting more flowers. Wow, that was fast. It was like, I'm ready to get back at work. That's a worker bee.
It's not stopping anywhere.
Yeah, no, he's not. He's not stopping at all. You're right. Interesting. Oh, but it's not supposed to pause for this. That's interesting, isn't it? Meet Beamy Bro. Nice the See Me Bro has a bee. It's like he just put on some yellow stripes. No biggie. All right, so back in our BAI, we wanted to fix a problem we're having. But before I did that, what I really wanted to do was make it so that the Y value of the destination position was switching just a little bit. So right now we're getting the scale of the flower and we're dividing it by 3. What if we divide it by a random number? So to delete this, go up here and grab random number with decimals. And instead of using 3, remember we just finessed this earlier to be 3. So if we change it to be somewhere between like 2.5 and 3.5, the bee will be moving up and down a little bit, which should look really cool. So with that set up, the last thing we wanted to fix down here is whether or not it pauses, because now it's just kind of pausing all over the place and it's not really doing what we want it to do. And so how do we fix that? What we can do is determine when do we want it to pause and use a Boolean. And so I think that's the way we're going to do this. So we're going to delete this equals in current state because that wasn't working just right. And we're going to create a new variable called Boolean underscore can pause. There we go. And then we're going to set can pause up here. When we're going to the flower patch, we know that we want to pause. So we'll go grab our can pause Boolean here, and we'll set it to Boolean input true found on your values tab. There we go. And then let's go ahead and duplicate that also when it's going to the beehive. But when it's flying around, we want it to not do that. So we'll set that to false. I'm going to hit the stop world button for just a second. And then we're going to open up the bee. And under the bee, I wanted to turn collisions back on and see if that broke our raycast function. And so it might, but we're going to go ahead and hit play. And I really enjoy flying around on the bee. And so look at that bee. And it flies. Oh, it's immediately going up. Let's go catch a red. Mr. Beamy Bro. Beamy Bro. Beamy Bro. Yeah, that's his name. No changing it now. Oh, I just remembered what I wanted to do. Oh, there he goes. And it is working. Okay, cool. So the raycast does seem to prevent the bee. Okay. It does fly through edges a little bit, but it's not bad. And it should just, yeah, it's nice because it's got a little bit of up and down. It's not a lot, but it does choose a position that is slightly up or slightly down. Just a little bit. So I had this thought about the beehive. If we zoom into the beehive, we're using this black dot to represent where the bee flying to. But what if we just stretch it out into the background a little bit like that? Then we can, scale it up a little bit. Now the bee should, next time it comes here, fly into the back of this because it's using the center position of this black dot. So now we should get a bee that actually flies into the hive rather than flying out of the hive or flying to the side of the hive. So let's go see what happens. Mr. Bee, you want to show us where you go to now? Tuesday, Oculus in the club. Yep. And it flies into the beehive. Mostly. Very nice, bee. Good job, bee. Oh, and that is a dive. Yep, that's good. Good job. Okay, I'm feeling pretty happy with our bee here. I can't actually hear it, which is a little disappointing. because we're using the raycast in such a way, I think we only need one raycast, so that's kind of cool. So I'm going to set this right here. I did want to scale the bee down a little bit.
Okay.
Huh.
That one's done. Oh, we got another one.
This is quite
The
interesting.
queen is calling.
Wow. How neat is
this
that?
This is cool.
Wow.
Oh my god.
This is really neat.
Okay, this is creeping me out because bees freak me out.
I can't hear them, so you guys are probably being more freaked out than me. I wish I could hear it.
It's my VR nightmare now.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to go to my personal space and come back so I can hear it. So what we think is happening, and just kind of a guess here, is that this raycast is backwards. And so we're going to swap this. So position of self and destination position, swap them and see if that prevents the bees from going underneath the ground. And that might work. The other thing that I wanted to do was select our tree. I'm going to unlock it. I'm then going to zoom into the tree and select all of the wooden pieces and set collidable to true. There we go. Let go of all those objects, zoom out. And now the bee theoretically should not be flying into the tree as well, or into the beehive. Although we'll make the beehive non-collidable just for the sake of that. Okay, and then the last thing we want to do here is duplicate a bunch of copies and see if we can prevent the bee from going into the ground. So just more copies means it's more frequent to see what's happening. Okay, so we'll go ahead and hit play. There go our swarm of bees. Yeah, so it kind of looks like as soon as they get really close to pointing at the ground, they kind of have to stop. They just don't seem to go any lower, which is kind of what we were expecting to happen. So this is good. The bees seem to, except for this guy, who has somehow managed to pull off getting really close but not going under. Okay, this is great news. The bees seem to no longer go into the ground. So basically we just had our vectors swapped. It's a very easy mistake. So instead of pointing with the forward direction of the bee, it actually was pointing out the other end of the bee. So, you know. So the last thing that we wanted to do with our bees is if you accidentally tap this beehive, we want the bees to swarm you until you get too far away. So we're going to initiate a swarm mode. And then we're going to delete all but one of our bees. And then what we need to trigger storm mode is a trigger. So we're going to go create a gizmo, trigger gizmo, and we're going to put this over here on our beehive. And for now, we're going to lock this tree down so we don't accidentally mess with it. And then we're going to take this trigger, center it with the beehive, then open up the properties panel. So as soon as a player tries to enter that trigger, we want to cause the bee to do stuff. So under our BAI, we're going to go to our variables tab and create a new object variable. This is going to be called our hive trigger. On world start, we want to listen to this hive trigger. We want to know whenever something happens there. So at the bottom of our events tab, we can grab listen to events, and then we'll go to hive trigger, drop that in here, and now we'll receive all of the trigger enter events on our hive. When trigger is entered by player, we'll go ahead and place this here at the bottom. And now we'll know that a player has entered the beehive. We want to then target the player. And so I think what we should do is save the player variable. So we'll go over here and say player, and we'll call this current target. So the first thing we're going to do is set current target to be the player. And what I'd like to do is then flip a switch called target player. And so up here, we're going to create under our variables tab, a new Boolean variable. And this will be an underscore Boolean called target player. With our target player Boolean, we're going to target the player as long as they're within a certain distance. And so the first thing we do is when triggers entered by player, we want to set this Boolean to be true. So we're going to set target player to be true. There we go. And now that we've set target player to be true, we're going to run a new if statement at the beginning of this loop, which is going to say, if we're targeting player, what are we doing differently? We're going to do quite a bit differently. So we'll go and put target player in here. And when this is true, we're going to need an else for when it's not true. And then we're going to put all of our normal things in this else statement since it's normally not true. So we'll drag our if up and all of our else ifs up. And this can be relatively difficult, so just kind of be patient with it. And you'll see a couple tricks there. So the last thing we want to move up is setting the current state. We don't want to change current state for the bee. Put it right above the else, and then we can drag else above it. And now current state is indented. And then once all of that's done, we do all of our normal stuff, setting the loop speed, which is the distance between there and there. We're going to use that same destination position vector, and all of our motion and rotation is the same. So up here, we just need to determine where are we going. So if we're targeting the player, we need to set the destination position, and that's going to be using the position of the player. And so what I'd like to do, though, is take that position of the player and the value of where we're currently at, but only use 90% of it. So under our operators, we're going to need to do a few things, and I'm trying to think backwards. It's relatively difficult. So the last thing, that we're going to do is a plus. Then we're going to do a minus, and just kind of bear with me as we get through this. So what we want to do is take the position of self. So we're going to go to the object transform, grab position of self. So we're taking the current bee's position, that's our destination position, is the current position of the bee, plus, and we're going to make a direction vector that we're going to multiply by 90%. What this means is the bee is never going to get so close to the player that they overlap. Okay, so we've got multiply by 90%. Now the direction is the position of self minus the destination, which is the player. So we'll go ahead and type in position of self minus the position of the player, which is found under player. So under vector, you'll find color, then player. And the position of the player we're going to be chasing after should be the head. I mean, bees often try to swarm around your head. It's scary. I don't know if we're building a scary simulator here. Whoops. And so there we go. The current target is the player. We're getting really close to their head. Very scary, but we need to stop, right? So this can't go on forever. We're going to grab an if. And once the player has gotten far enough away, we'll stop targeting them. So we'll go and grab a greater than symbol. And then we will call a new variable, which is going to be a number variable called chase distance. And I'm thinking we set this up to be like 5 meters. So not super far, but it's like you got to get 15 feet or more away. So we'll go put that in the B slot. And then what we're going to do is distance 2. So we'll go back to our operators tab, grab the distance 2 under vector math. This allows us to calculate the distance between the position of self and the position of the player. And once, not the position of self. We actually want to do the position of the hive, right? So we go hive trigger. No, we're going to use the actual beehive. There we go. So once the distance from the position of the beehive to the player is greater than the chase distance, we're going to then set target player to false. So we'll go up here, grab that set to, put that in the if, set target player to Boolean input false. Okay, so that should end that loop. And then interesting here is we need to also set can pause to be false because we don't want it to pause. We want it to continue chasing. So can pause will also be false. And this should be quite frightening. Most important, I do this all the time. You got to remember to reference your things. And so for us, our thing is the trigger. So we'll open that up, bring that into us. There we go. And grab the trigger reference pill, reference it over here. Voila. Okay, so close that and play. And now we should see that when I come up here and jump to hit the beehive, okay, it doesn't care. Oh, you see it's kind of flying opposite direction of me. Maybe we set the values backwards again. I got to learn how to do this right. So it sounds like I just keep messing this up. So this is definitely a me problem. So up here, you'll see that I unfortunately did this backwards. So we set destination position. We're going to duplicate this and then again cross these because its position of self goes where the head is, and then the head goes where the position of self is. And now we can delete the old one, and this should work. So I'll go ahead and hit play. And now run up and tag the bee hive. Oh no, it's chasing after me, but it's so slow. And it's going to go to the previous position I was at before it comes towards me. And it's pausing. Yeah, it shouldn't have been pausing. Once it's done doing its travel, it's going to travel back, and the bees will have de-aggroed. So, yep, there it goes. Bee has now de-aggroed. Not terrible, but let's see if we can make that better. Okay, so the first thing that we forgot to do was set can pause to false. Wait, no, we did do that. Look at that. It is false. Oh, but that's only if the distance is true. Okay, got it. So we need to put that up into here. There we go. That's better. What we want to do is change the speed, right? So right now, the speed is set at 0.5, but the bee really should be going like 2x that. Like it should be angry, right? Like super aggro running fast. And so we're going to create a new variable called current speed, and this will allow us to change the current speed. So what we're going to do is grab current speed and replace the speed MPS right here. This is the only place we used it. So now that we've replaced it, we want to go back to the top here where we're doing this if. We're going to set this value to be different. So we're going to grab that set, we're going to grab current speed, and we're going to change it to be a number variable that will not be adjustable as a variable. Oh, maybe it will be. We'll go and do a new variable called chase speed, right? Okay, chase speed. Okay. And chase speed is going to be 3 meters per second. Really fast, like scary, scary bee fast. And so there's chase speed. And then what we want to do is when it's not true, we're going to set it back to the normal speed. So right here we have our speed right there, and we'll just place that right there. And now the bee should be scary fast. And let's go try it out. Okay, so bees flying around. I hit the beehive. Oh no, it's chasing me. Oh no, it's like flying past me. Oh, but I must have gotten far enough away because it seems to have reverted. So let's make that distance a little bit further so it's a little bit more scary. Like 5 meters wasn't enough. Let's try 15 meters. You really got to outrun this bee. And then, because you know we're having fun, let's go and make a bunch of them. Okay, and play. Do you want to see what happens when you accidentally touch that beehive?
Let's do it.
Good luck. Oh no! Oh no!
Ah!
Run! Run,
Help!
dude! Run!
Oh no!
Oh, that is so funny.
They do.
They really do
Help!
chase. Run.
I'm out of here.
And at a certain point, they all start to kind of go off and do their own thing. Okay, that's not bad.
I got one. Ouch, it hurt.
Yeah, look at these flying bees going back, two heading back to the hive. Not bad, man. Not bad. So the only thing that I have like a little bit of about is that when they start following, they start to clump up. And I don't like the clumping. So I think we should add some random amount. So we should randomly offset them to be, oh no, they're chasing CB again. Yeah, okay, I want to make these bees more responsive because this is great, but like we got to get better. So the bees just are really slow to like change direction when he changes direction, which just is not scary. So down here, when we're sending this event to self, right, we're sending loop to self, we need to have an if-else statement here. And so if the target player method, we're going to do something different, and then we'll do else, and then duplicate that in there. And so because this has to be done at the very end, it's important that we put this here at the end. And so if we're targeting a player, we're sending to loop not with loop speed, and we're going to send it to player with like, I don't know, 0.3 seconds. Like this is going to update 3 times per second. These are going to be some scary bees. And then this will just do normal stuff if it's not targeting a player. So that's great. Now that we've got that done, the other thing I wanted to do is choose a random destination around the player's head. So rather than taking the player's head and using that position directly, let's duplicate this and then delete the position of the player's head. And then we're going to put a plus symbol there. And so notice how I duplicate when I want to make changes. It's just way easier because then I can put the plus symbol here. I want to use the head position, so I bring the head position back in, and then I can delete this now that I'm done with it. The last number I want to put in here is a new vector from XYZ. And what we're going to do is add some random values. And so you'll remember we've been doing this a lot recently, right? So we're grabbing the random number with decimals, and we'll put that in the Z slot. And then the number we're going to use is that number we created earlier, that are random offset. So we'll put that in the minimum. Then we'll go absolute value it into the maximum. So we'll scroll over just a little bit and then thumbstick to the right to duplicate. And then we'll duplicate this into the Y and the Z. There we go. And now the bees should follow pretty close. I'm actually really kind of excited and scared to see this. So, Simi, would you like to demonstrate what happens when you mess with the bees? Oh, no, dude.
No!
Oh, whoa.
I'm getting attacked!
You have no idea how bad this looks. It's so good. Oh my gosh. And then they turn around and everything's fine. No biggie.
Nothing happened.
The one thing I'm realizing though is if I touch this while they're on their way back, they don't get pissed off. They're just like, it's okay. No biggie. No
One
problem. Oh, one did.
Oh, two did.
Yeah, interesting how two of them did. So what I'm thinking we need to do, when the trigger is entered, we need to cancel sending the event to self and then resend it. So this will allow us to get it to happen really fast. So we'll go and say cancel sending loop to self and then send loop to self after 0.1 seconds. In fact, let's actually use a random number so it feels organic because that's been really nice. So we'll say random number with decimals between 0.3 and 3 seconds. And we'll actually go with maybe 0.1, so it just feels really organic in there. And then we want to cancel sending loop to self. So back here on our values tab, scroll to the top and you'll see cancel sending with delay, and we're going to cancel sending loop and then resend loop to self. And this should make the bees far more responsive even when they're in their flight back. So if you're like really trying to mess with these bees, should be pretty crazy. Yeah. And Simi's got blood, thirst, he's getting chased.
No.
Oh,
This
man.
is scary.
It is so scary to watch. Oh man. And the flight patterns look nice too. It's interesting. They really feel like they're flying kind of separate too. It looks like they're attacking you. It legit looks
They're
like
moving me too.
And then if I take over, they should chase after me pretty quick. They're like, "Oh no, new guy, what's up with this guy? Who the heck you think you are, man?" So yeah, you guys.
It sounds and look kind of dope. Nice.
So yeah, if you guys are interested in having bees chase you or liven up your world, this is the new asset in the Vidyuu Essentials Bundle. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the bell if you want to get notified when we post a new video. And if you want this, leave your Oculus username in the comments and we'll add you as a collaborator. Thanks to Simi Bro and Oculus for hanging out, and bye-bye!
This one is beautiful.